The Russians are protecting the church, the Armenian church, the Armenian Apostolic Church. Okay, I must confess that I titled this episode the way I did in a clickbaity fashion. I am going to talk about the article I just read from Armenian Press. There's a monastery, actually a couple churches, a couple of Armenian holy places. It's interesting in the West, in America, to hear the term a monastery. It for us, there's no, as far as I know, I could be totally wrong here, but there aren't monasteries in the United States. I don't know what, do Catholics call their places of training priests monasteries? I don't know. So I may be wrong on that. But when I plunged into the Armenian genocide research and visited some monasteries, Korvirap is actually the oldest Armenian monastery. Well, I don't know if it's the oldest monastery, but it's the oldest religious site, the oldest church in Armenia, the oldest holy place in that part of the world. It's the beginning of Christianity for the nation of Armenia. It was there before the first cathedral. Okay, a little bit of history. The first Christian cathedral is in Etchmiadzin. It's called Etchmiadzin. It's the church of Etchmiadzin. It still stands. It's 1700. No, it's like 1600 years old. The original building is like 1600. That's the first Christian cathedral. You Christians watching this, you don't know that? You don't know the very first Christian cathedral is in Armenia, Etchmiadzin. It's in Soghomon Tehlirian's story. In fact, we uncovered a letter written by Soghomon Tehlirian in 1916 when he was the gatherer of orphans, when he was collecting the remnants of his people. He was collecting orphans, and he was trying to get this one orphan placed, and he wrote a letter to a formal letter, which whatever the procedure was, in his own handwriting. I've seen it. I have a copy of it, trying to get this, appealing to the patriarch or the archbishop or whoever he needed to appeal to get this one particular orphan placed because he didn't have family. And anyway, that's a tangent. But I went to the monastery there's a monastery in Venice, Italy. That place is incredible. You can go to all the museums in the world and you will never see something like the Armenian monastery on a little island in the main bay of Venice, Italy. The island is called San Lazzaro. I won't go into detail, but because it's in limited space, it is so jammed full of incredible ancient art. There's like an Egyptian mummy there. There's some of the oldest handwritten copies of the Bible in the world there. So it's just incredible. I went to the island 3 times. I was in Venice 4 days. I went to the island 3 times. There's one boat a day that goes there. And I went 3 times and I made friends with a monk. On WhatsApp, I can just reach. I have a friend that's a monk, actual monk. Spent a lot of time. He took me, behind the scenes. We hung out. Anyway, Armenians, many of you watching are Armenian. And so, you'll comment if I'm wrong. You'll comment in the comment section if I'm wrong about what I'm about to say. Whether you're an observant Christian, whether you're an observant Armenian Apostolic or Catholic or Protestant, it's in your blood. Like it's so rooted in your history of Christianity, whether you pray or read the Bible or not. And so we're talking about something that's so inextricable from your culture, from the Armenian culture. And now here in the easternmost section that remains of Artsakh, Martuni, this little town called Martuni, has several religious sites. And so I was just reading that today or yesterday, January 4th, 2021, that the Archbishop of the region of Artsakh went with the command of the Russian peacekeepers, the Russian delegation that's there to be peacekeepers, and toured these holy sites, because, as I continue to say, it's not over. I read an article a couple episodes ago about there are prisoners of war, but Azerbaijan is not referring to them as prisoners of war. They're referring to them as terrorists, because it's not over. If they label them prisoners of war, then they have to abide by the agreement. But sleight of hand, semantic sleight of hand, rather than acknowledging that they're prisoners of war, that they're just terrorists, they're keeping them and holding them. And so the propaganda that they tell their own people is, no, these are terrorists we have. They want to keep those people. They want to continue torturing them. They want to kill them. And they want to get more of them. The Azerbaijanis want to kill more Armenians, to capture and torture more Armenians. I mean, you Turks and Azeris who watch this, you can't lie to yourself and think it's over, right? Shouldn't you Armenians be happy that there's no more fighting and killing going on? Why are you so upset? Why are you trying to overthrow your prime minister and etc.? You should be happy that there's no more killing. There's not an Azeri paying attention to this that believes that the killing is over, that they want to eradicate every Armenian in the place, whether by kicking them out or killing them. And that may be a little redundant. I say that all the time on here, but it's the facts. Like maybe this is the first video of mine that you've watched. That is a recurring theme. This thing is not over. But the Russians are protecting the Armenian church. Russia used to be a Christian nation before the Bolshevik Revolution, and that's why the Armenians aligned with them, and that's why the Ottomans believed that the Armenians were an enemy within, and in a sense that's true. But Christians are not militant. Christians, read the Bible. It's like Jesus did not resist when he was beaten, right? He got very angry at times, but he didn't defend himself. He knew what his purpose was. So, going on tangents, let me wrap up. I'm going to talk about something else here in a sec, because it's important this day in history. This day and the next couple of days in history are significant, and I want to talk a little bit about, this is going to be a little longer video. I always say I want to try and make it short, and then I don't make it short. Well, this one's probably going to be long. I'm going to ramble, but I'm speaking from my heart. I'm not rambling and speaking nonsense. I have thoughts, ideas, things that I want to communicate, and I'm allowing them to unfold. So I just checked Armen Press for a little bit, the latest, and the thing that stuck out to me was the Armenian Apostolic Archbishop visiting Martuni holy sites, the church at Nersis and the monastery, one other place. And that's good. Those things need to be preserved, because when this war starts up again, those places can be wiped out, and that's part of genocide, erasing a culture. Those are all right. I won't belabor that point any longer. Now, what do I want to talk about? January 5th and January 6th. 2021. Some of you watching this are not in America, and so you don't get the news. You get CNN, right? I've traveled the world, and the only American news that I found in the hotels or wherever was CNN. So if that's your source for American news, you have no idea what's really happening here in America. And that's kind of the point I want to make. America is populated by essentially two totally different populations, totally different versions of humans. There are those who, let's say, since I brought it up, are the CNN crowd, right? And when I say CNN, it refers to the establishment media, what's referred to as the legacy media, or the mass media, or the mainstream media. And there was a time when you could rely on the news from those sources. I'm talking ABC, CBS, NBC, MSNBC, CNN, New York Times, Washington Post, et cetera, et cetera. But over the past, gradually, but in an accelerated rate over the past 4 years, they have forfeited, or they've burned their press credentials, right? Like openly have, rather than reporting news, right? The press is supposed to report news. There's supposed to be an opinion section, right, where the editorialization and the opinions are posted. The news is supposed to be reported. This is what happened. And that stopped happening because of a literal sickness. Like it's a psychosis that occurred when a political figure assumed power completely. It was a shock, right? Like their whole world was shocked in 2016, and November 8th, 2016. How do I say this? There's an agenda that's been happening. I'm going to avoid certain terms. I use certain terms, and I notice that that YouTube does not recommend my videos. So the way this happens is I'll do a subject, or I'll do a video, and I'll title it a certain way. And the title, there's algorithms that, when people search, your title will come up in their search. And then also there's an algorithm within YouTube where certain words are flagged and avoided, right? So I've noticed when I use this, even if it's not in the title, but if in the subject, like, because they run their algorithm, they watch the whole video as it's processed, they watch it, or they process the words that I'm saying right now, and any certain words and certain subjects fit into their algorithm, and they will not recommend. Like when you watch videos, after the video's over, a page will come up and it'll list a bunch of videos, and it might be, it'll recommend videos to people who are interested in certain subjects. And if I talk about particular subjects, no recommendations. And I can watch the analytics behind the scenes, and I can look and I can check and I can see, half of my views of this video came from YouTube recommendations. They're recommending my videos. And so there's this demographic that is interested in Artsakh, in Armenia, in Azerbaijan, in Nagorno-Karabakh, in this conflict. And even when I talk about those subjects, when I bring up certain other subjects within the video, it won't recommend them, or it's a minimal recommendations. And so the views are less, right? I've been doing it and watching it, and it's irrefutable that there's a censorship going on. So I'm going to try and avoid certain words and phrases, obvious words and phrases, to see, if this video gets recommended. But we are at a point in history. There's a phrase I use: things that have never happened before are happening all the time. All right, we get used to things a certain way. And we grow up in a culture and we have a routine, and we're used to being able to run to the store and buy what we need, or do this or do that. And the world has changed so dramatically within this past year. And there are forces at work. And when I say that, some people think there's this grand scheme like Illuminati. There's a cabal. There's a central group of masterminds that are orchestrating things in a certain direction, right? And certainly there are people in power, people of great influence that are manipulating things. I would say the election process that we just went through, that there's one of the candidates was like not making his own decisions, right? He was not making his own decisions. He was not, I would say, not even being consulted, probably. So there are forces behind, and I mean, that's the most powerful position on the planet, is the president of the United States. And so that's of concern, that there are forces manipulating that potential office holder. But when I say there are forces at work, I mean beyond that. And when I say that, I mean, for those Christians in the audience, principalities and powers, right? There are entities that have an agenda, and sometimes their agenda is blatantly obvious to those who have eyes to see. If you have eyes to see and ears to hear, and let me just get briefly at what I'm referring to, or try to. So in 2016, this crazy thing happened. Those forces that had been in control of our government were suddenly faced with a huge obstacle. There was this outsider who came to power, and they had to plot and scheme and plan how to return to power, how to remove that obstacle. And everything in their power was aimed at that task. It was a singular goal, right? And this is the mainstream media. This is the embedded forces in our political system, in our legal system, in our justice system, in international politics and international business. In our, so there, it's not that all of these systems are corrupt in themselves. It's just that there is such a widely woven net of like-minded individuals. So it's not that there's one person giving out commands that all of those people receive, right? This hidden network. No, it's just a network of people that believe a certain way. And so that is the spiritual force, right? That there's not a human being that is intentionally manipulating these things. There's a force behind like-minded, right? The mentality is the deception, right? These principalities and powers put out lies, and everybody who believes the lie is now a part of that network and being manipulated by that principality. I hope that makes sense. And so that those principalities don't know what's going to happen. And so those powers were surprised by this obstacle to their goals, right? It's like this president gets elected, and those principalities are like, wait, how are we going to achieve our goal of destroying the human race, right? That's the goal, like destroying mankind, and by telling them that these are the answers, like the lies that are purported, like socialism and Marxism and communism. Those are the lies that these principalities say this is the answer for the human race, but it ultimately ends up killing the human race because it always leads to mass murder, right? And so what happened was this elaborate scheme to accuse this obstacle, this person, this president, of colluding with a foreign power, that he's a puppet of this foreign power and that he's just trying to enrich himself. And I mean, a guy that's already a billionaire, right? That's actually losing money by becoming president. Anyway, but enough people, you get the people, the minions that believe this lie to go along with it. And so this elaborate scheme of let's find different ways to accuse him. Let's do an investigation that lasts 2 years. It's like it's literally a miracle that this president didn't have any like overt corruption in his business dealings. I'm telling you, if there was overt corruption in his business dealings, it would have been out on day one, right? It would have been out on. It's like, wow, the guy who had an integrity. Maybe not in his personal life and his sexual escapades, but where it matters for a president who's supposed to run the country, any illicit or ulterior agenda. I mean, it took all the enemies allied against him, and they still couldn't find anything. So they had to fabricate things. This phone call was, he was, abusing his power, right? And it's like a phone call. So we've seen all that play out for the past 4 years. It's like this script, like the script that we've been watching in the United States. If you're paying attention, like if you see the truth, right? Not if you're believing the lie. If you're believing the lie, you're watching a horror show and you think Hitler's about to massacre, like that that Hitler was just unseated, we were victorious, right? That's kind of the narrative that they're going. But if you see the truth of what's really happening, that this undermining of our duly elected president, this